Oh, hi. I'm Jeff Mucklin, and this is Science at Home, brought to you by the Nurture Nature Center. I just got back from vacation. I went to Florida in January, and during my trip, I spent a day at the Kennedy Space Center. The Kennedy Space Center is located on the Atlantic side of the Florida Peninsula. Its location is significant. Most rocket launches get a small boost by being launched from as close to the Earth's equator as possible, and Florida is well positioned to take advantage of this boost. The boost comes from the Earth's rotation, and it rotates fastest at the equator and slowest at the poles. Also, when launching east from the Kennedy Space Center, rockets have a large splashdown area in the Atlantic Ocean where debris can land with minimum likelihood of causing injury or property damage. The Kennedy Space Center comprises over 700 facilities and buildings spread out across Merritt Island. These facilities include launch pads. The towers around the rocket on this pad are here to safely conduct lightning to the ground and away from the rocket. There's also rocket fuel depots, accommodations for astronauts, a runway used to land the space shuttle, and many other structures. One building that is sure to catch your eye if you ever visit would be the Vehicle Assembly Building. This building is 525 feet tall, 716 feet long, and 518 feet wide. It is so big that a bus could easily drive down one of the stripes on the flag that you see here if it was on the ground. The inside of the building is not divided into dozens of floors. This is the largest single-story building in the world. It is a cavernous open space. It's one of the largest enclosed spaces of any kind in the world. This is where rockets are stacked. Rockets don't travel in one piece to space. Typically, they are actually composed of a series of rockets stacked one on top of the other, like this. The first rocket at the bottom of the stack, this one here, will carry the others to a certain altitude with a certain speed, and then it will be dropped away, either to be discarded or landed for reuse. The smaller remaining rocket will continue on its journey to space with less dead weight. This staging helps make spaceflight possible. For more information about staging and how rockets work, check out this video that we did, or follow the link below. Another interesting place to visit is the Visitor Center, of course. The first thing you'll encounter at the Visitor Center is the Rocket Garden. This is no ordinary garden because the main feature is a display of historic rockets. This first rocket is a Juno 2 rocket, and behind it there is a Titan II used during the Gemini program. This here is an Atlas rocket. Back there, the one on the left is another Atlas used during the Mercury program, and the one on the right is a Mercury Redstone rocket. This is a Delta. This is a Juno 1, and this one on its side is a Saturn 1B used for a few Apollo missions and during the Skylab program. The Visitor Center also has a theater, mock-ups of space capsules and rovers, and its own Science on a Sphere, just like the one at the Nurture Nature Center. There is also a building dedicated entirely to the space shuttle. Outside of the building, you can see a full-scale mock-up of the external fuel tank and the solid rocket boosters that the shuttle used. Stepping into the room where they actually have the real Space Shuttle Atlantis on display is awe-inspiring. It stunned me to look at this complex and versatile machine and think about the forces that it had to endure as it went to space and returned to Earth 33 times during its working life. There is another building that is an important part of the visitor experience that is dedicated to the Saturn V. The Saturn V is the rocket that took humans to the moon during the Apollo program, and to me, it is the most remarkable piece of space hardware anywhere in the world. The Saturn V remains the most powerful rocket ever successfully flown. Each of the engines that you can see in this photo are so large that a person can easily stand inside of it. You can see me in this photo right over there for scale. They produce more thrust than any rocket engine ever thrown or even on the drawing table today. Here we see an unflown lunar lander, and here we see a flown and recovered crew capsule that was designed to take 3 astronauts to the moon and back to the Earth for a splash landing in the ocean. I was very fortunate to be able to time my visit to the Kennedy Space Center to arrive on the day of a rocket launch. We watched the launch 6 miles from the pad at the visitor center, and even from that distance the sound was incredible. This was a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, and it put on quite a show. Just a few seconds after the rocket leapt off the pad, it was above the tree line, and we could see it and a dramatic pillar of flame that was propelling it upward. A few seconds later, the sound of the rocket reached our ears. The sound had a very distinctive pulse to it, kind of like thrum, thrum, thrum. I don't know if that really gives you a sense for what it was really like, but it didn't sound the way you might have expected, or at least the way I would have guessed it would have sounded like. The sound grew louder at first, and then it started to slowly fade as the rocket got higher and further away from us. Eventually, the first stage was mostly empty, and it separated, allowing the second stage to continue on to space. The first stage of a Falcon 9 rocket does something that is quite remarkable. It doesn't crash into the ocean like just about every other first stage rocket ever flown. It normally lands on a barge out at sea and is returned to shore a few days later so it can be refueled and flown again and again. Occasionally, the first stage actually lands back at Kennedy, and much to my surprise, this was one of those return launches. I could have looked it up, but I guess I just missed this piece of information. So I was actually kind of frightened at first when I first heard the sonic boom that the rocket made as it came back to the pad, and I got to hear the roar of the engines for a second time. The Falcon 9 first stage made a perfect landing, and later that day, the second stage successfully delivered its payload of 105 satellites to orbit. One interesting thing about any rocket launch facility that you might notice is that they typically are quite empty and devoid of man-made structures. Not too many people want to live near a noisy rocket launch facility, and it's really not safe to build anything very close to the launch pads. For this reason, most launch facilities are also wildlife preserves. The Kennedy Space Center is no exception, and it is actually co-located with the Merritt Island National Wildlife Preserve, which is the second largest wildlife preserve in the state of Florida, with the Everglades being the larger one. This is a side of NASA that most people are not aware of, I think. Here's a launch viewing stand, and between here and that rocket, there is a body of water called the Banana Creek, parts of which are a protected habitat for the endangered manatee. These gentle giants find safe refuge in these waters, and along with the other canals and rivers of the Kennedy Space Center. Another body of water that is part of the Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge is the Indian River Lagoon. This lagoon has a greater biodiversity than any estuary in the continental United States. This incredible body of water is threatened by fertilizer runoff and other human impacts. Currently, there is a plan to increase flows through the estuary to historical levels and to reduce fertilizer runoff and/or capture pollutants to improve water quality in this remarkable river. The Merritt Island Wildlife Refuge is home to over 3,000 wild pigs. We saw a small group of feral pigs on our way into the visitor center. We saw several alligators that day as well. And during our trip, we also saw a bald eagle nest along the road. There are many bald eagles at the preserve. I highly recommend that you go see a rocket launch in person one day if you ever get the chance, but I know that can be difficult. Now, occasionally, rocket launches from a smaller facility in Virginia can be seen from where I live in the Lehigh Valley. This facility is called Wallops Island, and when the launches occur at night with clear skies, the rocket flame and exhaust can clearly be seen even from our distance of 200 miles away. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.